Hey, this is Raul for Bass Musician Magazine, and we are here in the sunny Northwest at Insomnia Coffee Company with none other than one of the pillars of the bass community here in Portland, Oregon, Ben Jones.
How you doing, Raul?
Oh, doing great. So what I wanted to do is give our readers worldwide an opportunity to get to know you and know about you. So we're going to kind of take it from the very start. Tell us about yourself, Ben.
Bassist of going on about 35 years now, out of Detroit, Michigan, born and raised Detroit, Michigan. Moved to the Pacific Northwest in the late 80s, have been here ever since, and just been blessed to be able to do what I do for a living. It's a phenomenal thing.
Gotcha. How did you get into playing bass? Where did you get your start?
I actually started as a drummer, playing in my church.
We won't hold that against you as a drummer. We like drummers.
Exactly. But my father taught music.
Okay.
And made me go to other people to learn. Mm-hmm. He said he didn't want it to be biased. I mean, he taught me an awful lot, but made me go to other instructors to learn. He just didn't want it to be biased. So he also was an entrepreneur and would build businesses. Mm-hmm. So I was listening to a record, Stanley Clarke, I Want to Play For You, the live record. And I was listening to the guitar player trying to learn how to play this guitar, Ray Gomez, trying to learn how to play guitar stuff. And I kept hearing the stuff Stanley was doing, and it was like this. It was like, oh man, this is cool.
Yeah.
Forget trying to get women. I just want to get,
just want to get the groove.
I want to play that groove, man.
Yeah.
I want to do that.
Yeah.
And I worked all summer, bought my first bass, and it's been that ever since.
Excellent. Do you find, this is kind of an interesting ongoing thing because of all of the members of the band, we have such a more intrinsic relationship with drummers. Mm-hmm. And my son, kind of the quick side story, he's with a band, I won't mention any names or anything, but one of his great frustrations is that the drummer just is not getting the groove on like some of the Latin beats and all this stuff. He says he's playing them more like a march.
Right.
Do you find that having been a drummer equips you better when it comes to your interaction as a bassist with other drummers? Because you're like, hey, this is what I need you to give me here.
Well, certainly. It can also be a real double-edged sword, because when you find drummers that maybe haven't really studied a particular style, and you have, you kind of find that as well. So where, yes, it would equip you better to play with a drummer that does get it.
Yeah.
It kind of is a little frustrating sometimes when you work with the ones that
don't.
That don't, or that just haven't studied that.
Gotcha.
Really.
Gotcha. So moving away from the drumming and moving on more to the bass. So you got going with the bass. How did you continue to develop this very hands-on kind of?
It was the high school that I went to, Northwestern High School in Detroit.
Okay.
A lot of the teachers in the fine arts department were folks from Motown.
Okay.
So I got to, before I was old enough to ever be in a bar or a club or anything, got to go and work with a lot of legendary Motown artists and musicians, and would play and sub with their bands and do things like that.
Nice.
So it was a real baptism by fire.
Gotcha.
I don't think I ever really had that time to sit and really work on this or work on that. As I started to get better at it, people, because of who my father was in the community, knew about me, and they started saying, hey, can you come play with us? Can you come do this? And okay. And it just sort of spiraled, from there. Just kind of spiraled out of control. A good out of control, but out of control nonetheless.
Gotcha. So with as much going on as there was, what was the motivation for you to come out explore the Great Northwest?
There was a gal that had a band that was out in the Northwest back when we had top 40 bands.
Okay.
When you would set up on Wednesday, play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday somewhere, was having issues with her band, fired her entire band, and she had friends that lived in Detroit.
Gotcha.
And she came back to Detroit, wanted to hire some of those people, some of them happened to be playing with me. And went by a guy's house to deliver something to him, and she introduced herself. Oh, you play bass? Yeah, okay. Do you have a bass with you? Yeah, I'm on my way to a gig. Yeah, can you play something for me? Okay. She says, well, if I ever need anybody, I'll let you know. I'm like, okay, cool. 2 days later, I get a phone call. She just said, forget it. Let's just do it now.
Nice.
And she lived here. She lived in Aloha, Oregon.
Nice.
So I came out on the road with them and have been here ever since.
Wow. You just never know what thing will get you kind of going down the path.
Right.
Now that you're here, I know you're super busy. I remember I saw you when we'd been to see Esperanza Spalding at the Crystal Ballroom. I know you're playing a lot with Patrick Lamb, who he's like the white rice of Portland. Most anything that you see going on,
much.
Patrick is playing there. Look at a festival, and he's in the middle of it.
Right.
So, what other things? I know you've got a lot going on. Tell us a little bit about that.
Wow. Everything has really. Let me preface all this by saying I'm humbled. And I feel absolutely blessed to have had and continue to have the career that I'm having. It's a phenomenal thing. That being said, I was with the Neville Brothers for about 2 years, 2.5 years. I've done a lot of smooth jazz gigs, Peter White, Rick Braun, guys like Frank McComb, Jeff Lorber, Darren Ron, Paul Brown. I continue to get to work with these people, and every day I just feel it's a blessing every day.
Absolutely. And are you doing any teaching? Are you sharing some of your...
I am. When I'm at home, I'm teaching at a music store here out in Hillsboro.
Nice.
And I try and get together for some private instruction from time to time as my schedule allows.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. I'd love to get into more of that.
Well, and I find that a lot of times when you are showing somebody, you're breaking it down for somebody, it just helps you all the better to go, oh, wait, I think I'm getting a whole other angle on this, or I'm getting something I hadn't seen before, another way to go about this.
Funny thing is when you have your students break it down for you. That's the funniest thing. It's like you sit down and somebody's trying to learn a technique or somebody's trying to figure out what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I say, well, wow, I can do this, but I can't. Let me figure out how to explain it. And they're like, well, all you're doing is this and this and that and this and so. And you're going, well, I never really thought of it that way.
There you go.
But yeah, I guess that's what it is. So when they break it down for you, that's really interesting.
Well, and especially with bass, there's been such an evolution. And it is relatively a newer instrument in comparison to a lot of things. And so if you look at it, it's been a progression where with like even a lot of the Motown back in the day, it was more of your finger funk kind of thing until all of a sudden somebody like, okay, I can pop, I can slap, I'm going to do this. And now you hear so much popping and slapping that you get other folks going, well, doesn't anybody play finger funk anymore? I mean, what's going on?
And oddly enough, it is still there.
Yeah.
And it's like, skinny ties and bell bottoms and all that stuff. Every so many years, all this stuff kind of comes back around, and so now, right now, as a matter of fact, we're going through that again. You get a lot of your R&B artists, folks like D'Angelo and John Mayer and what's his band, Snarky Puppy. Oh my God, the guys like that will sit, and that whole finger funk thing is just, it's all coming back, and where there's a lot more groove oriented music again. Gotcha.
And that gets tied in with gear, because we can't get away from the gear. Gear acquisition syndrome for all of the brothers and sisters out there. So tell us a little bit about what you have dialed in to get your sound.
Well, my sound is, I would guess you'd say, coming full circle. When I was growing up, one of my all-time favorite bassists, for a plethora of reasons, has always been Marcus Miller. So the jazz bass tone, that sort of thing that a jazz bass and only a jazz bass will do. I've come full circle. I sat down one day and made a list of all the instruments that I've owned in the last 30 odd years. Bought, sold, traded, bought, sold, traded. So that is one of the tones that has really helped me to shape who I am. The thing I've gotten into lately, and I know you guys are all going to tell me I'm coming late to the party. The thing I've gotten into lately is P-bass style bass with flat wounds. Oh my God. That has been my big thing lately. We're back to the whole finger funk deal.
Yeah.
That I'm really, really digging on that. So I have managed through all of this to put 3 instruments together that I pretty much can do anything I ever want to do.
Gotcha. And with that, because with the flat wounds and the P-bass, I think for you to get a lot of the sound from the instrument itself is when you start coming to amplification. You're dialing it in pretty like straight up and flat, and just kind of let the instrument sound come out on its own, right?
Right. And that is something I haven't been able to do. And here's sort of my gear plug. Until I got together with TC Electronic, that's all I have to do is set everything flat, plug in the bass. My basses sound like my basses.
Gotcha.
It's all the nuances, all the differences, everything just comes through for what it is. There's not the coloration, there's not any kind of a bump or dip in any of the frequencies. You don't have to dial this in and dial that out, and I can just set it flat. And I mean, it even makes the head that I use, the BH800. Man, I can take that. I take it on fly dates, and I'll show up to places, and they'll have a stack of something in a head and something that's supposed to be popular. And I just kind of politely pack up their head and, put it off to the side and put this little. And the engineers look at me going,
"What, that little thing?"
Yeah, what is that thing? Until they hear it, and
there you go.
They're good with it. But yeah, that's what with bass. To me, that's always what I've been in search of.
Gotcha.
Is being able to just make that. You buy a bass because it sounds a particular way.
Exactly.
So why buy that bass and have to sit and alter your amp to get it to sound the way that it's supposed to sound to begin with?
Gotcha. Well, and I think as we talk about coming full circle, back in the day, what you heard was the bass, and then as electronics and people started playing around, you started seeing effects, and I know there's pedals. I'm blown away. I every day I find out there's more and more companies making pedals and stuff. But I myself, when I play, I just like to hear the instrument. I guess if there's a special song that needs something like that, sure, you could probably use it. But for my own taste, I really just want to hear what's coming out of the instrument. Now, it takes us back to the instrument because what are you playing on?
I'm playing Keysoul Carvin basses.
Gotcha.
Exclusively. I am an endorser for Keysoul Carvin, and like I said, again, first time, 30 years of playing. I pick up one of their instruments. I say, this instrument is supposed to sound like this. I pick it up. I play. That's exactly what it sounds like every time.
Gotcha.
Every time.
And what have you got in the works? What's coming down the pipe? What are we looking forward to here?
Quite a few things. I am working on a solo disc. Because of my schedule, it's been about 2.5 years in the can. But I am finishing up production on that.
Gotcha.
A lot of playing. It's coming up on summertime. A lot of concerts and festivals and things with Patrick, with a great guitar player here in the Northwest, Lloyd Jones, doing a bunch of stuff with him. I've got a Motown review coming up this weekend with a couple of wonderful vocalists from here in the Northwest.
Nice.
Not a lot of road travel, and I'm really thankful for that. I get to spend a little bit of time at home now.
Sure.
But a lot of playing, nonetheless.
Excellent.
A lot of playing.
Excellent. And what advice? Because this is something I know that a lot of times you'll see young musicians, people that are just kind of starting out. what advice do you have for young bassists that are getting started now? What would you recommend with the knowledge that you've gained over all these years of doing this?
Respect the music. That is probably number one. You go out and you hear a lot of bands these days. They don't know the right words to the songs. They don't know the right chords or the right parts to the songs. They don't get into the songs and try and understand what the musicians that were playing were trying to say when they played a particular part. And they don't feel that those parts are valid, even though those were the parts that were written. A lot of musicians try so hard to be themselves and do their own thing. And to me, and just my opinion, the real challenge is to try and dig in and see if you can make the audience feel what the bass player that recorded that song was trying to make the audience feel.
Gotcha.
It's not always about where you can take it. Yes, there's evolution. You got to have that. You got to pick it up from here, move it over, take it to someplace else. I absolutely get that. But my biggest piece of advice is to learn music correctly. Learn how to read. It's huge. You know, I mean, a lot of guys can play, and they can play a lot of stuff. Learn how to read. It's going to be huge. In this day of everybody owning home studios, get some studio gear. Sit down and record yourself playing. I mean, with good gear where you can really hear what you're doing. Spend the money. Buy good gear to begin with.
Gotcha.
That's another big one. A lot of people lose
Interest?
interest. Totally lose interest because they have a bass that they have to fight, and they go, "Oh my God, this hurts," or I don't. This is just, it's not the sound I want.
Gotcha.
Take a minute, spend the time, spend the money, get good gear to begin with. And good is a relative term, okay, right? I'm not saying that you have to get what I have or what you have or whatever, but find what actually speaks to you and get that.
Absolutely.
Get that to begin with, and you'll have a much better time.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting because I was chatting with Chuck Rainey. And we were talking about his bass, and one of the first requirements that he has is he wants it to be lightweight.
Right.
Because neither he nor I nor anyone else is getting any younger, and maybe when I was 18 I could stand up there with a 14-pound bass or something, but now if it doesn't have to weigh that much, I'm really kind of liking that. Right. And the other part that he had that was interesting was, it's not necessarily about how much you're spending on the gear. Right. You know, so just because it's real expensive doesn't necessarily make it the right instrument. So when people ask me, what do you recommend? My first thing is you need to hold it. You need to feel. You need to get an idea how it fits with you. Yep. And if it's inexpensive, but it feels good, then it'll get you there. And that was what Chuck was saying. He says you can get to a gig in a cheap car the same way you get to a gig in a limo. You know, you're going to get there either way. You can. And two things on that subject. The first one is gear is like a car. Yeah. It's the same idea. You can go out and you can buy, you take any car manufacturer, they make cars that leave something to be desired. And then they have cars that are the end-all, be-all, greatest thing that you could possibly imagine. Sure. But they have all these cars that are in between. And if you just take a minute and go sit in all the cars, drive them around, see how the steering wheel feels. Can you reach everything you need to reach? You know, is everything comfortable? You might find that one of the lower dollar cars is actually a better car for you. Exactly. Exact same idea with musical instruments. Most of the sound and the tone that you get is right here. Absolutely. It has zero to do with the instrument. Because if you take the greats, like Chuck, oh my God, I had a chance to talk to Chuck at NAMM. Yeah. And it was phenomenal. Something off my bucket list. There we go. But if you talk to guys like that, Chuck can pick up any bass. Yeah. It doesn't matter what it is, and slay you. Well, the funny thing was, we were. He's currently Exotic is making a signature bass for him,
Right.
and they had one of his signature models, and they handed it to him, and just the moment he had it in his hands, he goes, "This isn't my bass."
Right.
And,
Right.
and he says, "It's like your wife. You know the difference between, this woman and this woman. This one is not my wife."
That's not my wife.
This
That's
is
it.
so
Right.
he was very particular about it, and it had all the specs for him, but it was those subtle details and nuances that
Right.
he totally was like. So I don't doubt that he could just play the heck out of anything, but he knew the one that he wanted.
Well, you absolutely
It's the
know.
most, yeah.
You absolutely know. And not only do you know that it's not your bass, it could be your bass, and you know when something's off.
Yeah,
You know when something just is not quite right. So, absolutely.
totally. So, kind of wrapping up here, because I don't want to steal too much of your time. As we look forward, I know we were also chatting about kind of the future with bass and social media,
Oh my.
and there's a whole lot more world outside of like a lovely coffee shop where we are right now, which I'm
Right.
and really enjoying a lot. But tell us a little bit. I know that you've been looking at some of that stuff as far as kind of future projects and things that you're thinking of doing.
When we were growing up, having a computer in your state was a big deal. Having a computer in your home,
Unheard of.
unheard of. There's
No way.
no way. You had to be James Bond or something to have a computer in your home.
Had to be NASA.
Oh, woo, for real. So if you look at how far we've come to even have something called social media and what's possible. We were chatting earlier about, you look at Facebook. I didn't know you could stream live on Facebook. I found this out at midnight last night.
Wild.
Totally wild. I get on this thing. People, I had people that I idolized were chiming in to a live stream that I put up sitting in my bedroom.
Nice.
Just kind of went, really? Whoa! Oh man, this person's on my. Really? It's absolutely the future. You have to understand social media. You have to. You will not get along without it. I promise you. Gone are the days that you go to your typewriter
Yeah.
and you type up a resume and maybe go someplace and have somebody take your picture, right? And you put it all in a nice little folder with a cassette,
Yeah.
right?
A lot of people are going to go, what is that?
Right, exactly.
What is-
Oh, cassette. Oh, I'm sorry. For the younger folks, we used to have these things called cassettes before CDs and MP3s.
Yeah.
But and send them off to somebody, an executive in a building somewhere, that's going to decide whether or not you get to make a record.
There you go.
Right? No. There's none of that anymore. If you want to do something for yourself, my other piece of advice for bass players, if you want to do something and you want to make something of yourself, you have to do it. You have to understand social media. You have to know that it's out there, because it's the people that get it that are going to get those gigs, that are going to be able to do those things, that are going to get seen, that are going to get that popularity. But you have to, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Gotcha.
If you see somebody do something on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever, and it looks cool to you, and it looks like something you want to do, man, get on there and just type to them, hey, how do you do this?
Yeah.
People are so willing to share information these days. I mean, they really are.
Absolutely.
And if they're not, somebody else will.
Absolutely. Well, and I've always felt that in the bass community, we're a real chill crowd of people, so very approachable. You know,
I think so.
I've rarely ran into anybody that, unless they were really hungry. And I had one chat with one bassist who his dinner was on table, so he was having a little trouble making some time for me. But
Right.
I understand that the man's got to eat,
happens,
right?
guys, gotta eat.
So, but other than that, you know, always very, very helpful and all that. Well, Ben, I really appreciate you taking time from your busy schedule to sit down with us to bring this information out to the readers for Bass Musician Magazine. I know for our readership out there that now that you've had a chance to meet Ben, you're going to realize how many times you keep seeing him. He turns up everywhere. And so then you'll go, well, hey, there's Ben, you know. So don't miss an opportunity if you're in the Northwest to see him playing. Again, if you're at the NAMM show, I know I run into him every time. I run into him more at the NAMM show than I do
We live in the same town, and I see you every year at NAMM.
I know, it's crazy. But look for the things that are going on. Hit him up for advice. Again, he's knowledgeable. He can get you dialed in. Website or ways that people can reach you directly if they have any questions?
Website just got dialed in.
Okay.
It's not even live. It'll be another couple days before it's
Okay.
live. But benjonesbass.com.
Gotcha.
Okay. Facebook, Ben Jones Fans. Reverb Nation, Ben Jones on Bass. Instagram, Ben Jones on Bass. Twitter, Ben Jones on Bass. I really, without some sort of a secretary or assistant, can't keep up with any more social media than that.
Gotcha.
But Reverb Nation, for the most part, you can go to there's audio, there's video, there's tour dates, there's everything you need to know.
Well, and that way you can plan ahead and catch Ben at a
Absolutely.
performance. And
Absolutely.
Yell at him from the crowd. Yell Bass Musician Magazine. He'll know where you're coming from.
Nice.
He may wave back or something.
Yep.
So anyway, thanks again. You've seen it here. Bass Musician Magazine from Insomnia Coffee Company in the Great Northwest. Excellent coffee. I gotta say, tasty, tasty. You saw it here.
Thanks, guys.
Peace out.